up, my tech tycoon? So today I'm going to show you how you can dramatically increase your startup fundraising success rate by treating it like sales. It might be very obvious to some of you, but for those to whom it is not obvious, fundraising is sales. Plain and simple. It is in fact probably one of the most difficult sales that you can possibly do. And this is challenging for a lot of founders because most founders do not come from a sales background. And that's totally fine, but there are a couple of things that you have to know about sales that will really help you, I think, to be much more efficient in your fundraise. But before we dive into that, make sure to subscribe and to hit the like button if you're enjoying the Startup Basics series. So now back to our programming. So fundraising is sales. And the first thing that you need to make sure when you are selling something is sell to the right customer. Find the right customer. And this is such a common mistake that I just cannot believe how pervasive this mistake is, where founders will reach out to investors that are completely interested in something, in a completely different vertical, or investing in a completely different stage. And it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of time for everybody. It's a waste of time for you because, you're sending out these emails, or you're making calls, or you're trying to network your way into somebody that will never fund you because you're simply not in their focus area. So, just like you can't sell ice to an Eskimo, or you probably can't, I don't know, maybe you can. The thing that you have to remember is that you have to find the right investors. So if you are doing a consumer startup, then do not approach, Series A plus B2B SaaS investors. It's just not going to work. So do your research. And in fact, the other tip that I will give you is that you don't necessarily have to do the research yourself. If you are a CEO, you're probably super busy with a whole bunch of other things, like trying to nail your product, your marketing, try to, build your team and things like that. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be you doing the research. You could get somebody, an intern, you could get a virtual assistant to help you do the research for you in identifying the right investor that you should be reaching out to. The other thing that I wanted to stress is that as you're having conversations, you need to be iterating on your pitch. So trust me when I say this, your pitch is going to suck when you're first starting out. It may not suck completely, but it will definitely get way better as soon as you start having conversations and people start asking you questions, and you just realize that some things are not as clear as they could be. So keep iterating. Every conversation you have, make an improvement to your pitch, to your positioning, and to your deck. The next thing that is super important in sales, sales is kind of a simple process. It's super difficult to do, but it's kind of a simple process. So it's kind of a pipeline. You have your pipeline of leads, you reach out to those leads, and then you close them. But at the very beginning of that process is the pipeline of leads. So once again, if you do not have a really good pipeline of leads, of investors that are likely to invest or are likely at least to be interested in what you're doing, then you're not going to be able to reach out to enough investors to actually get commitments. So doing that pre-work, and once again, this is a really great area where you can kind of divide and conquer, but getting a consistent pipeline of leads of people that you should be reaching out to that are well targeted and likely to respond to what you are offering is super important. The next thing is that a lot of founders, they do their fundraising very ad hoc, kind of just spur of the moment. As things come in, they reach out to people, they maybe aren't doing a really great job of following up, etc. This is a problem. There's a reason why there are so many CRMs and platforms and tools to help salespeople keep track of their leads, their conversations, etc. It's because it works. Yes, it is tedious. I get it. But trust me, then the amount of time that you will put into better tracking your leads is going to come back to you manyfold as your success rate dramatically improves because you're able to follow up in a timely fashion. You know who not to waste time with, you know who to put more time into. So keeping track of your leads, your connections, and your entire sales cycle is super important. Now, you don't have to do you don't have to get Salesforce, or you don't have to get a fancy CRM. You could get a less fancy CRM. You could get a free CRM like Zoho or HubSpot. You could even do it in a spreadsheet, and a lot of founders do it in a spreadsheet, and it completely works. The most important thing is choose the method that works for you and that you can stick with. Once you have that system planned out, and once you're keeping track of your leads and conversations and follow-ups, etc., the thing that you have to figure out now is how many leads and how many conversations should you be having. So there's a very, very rough rule of thumb. It varies dramatically for how strong your presentation is, different industries, how well you target investors. But in general, let's assume that for 50 outreaches that you do, you're going to go into diligence with 5 and you're going to close 2 of those investors. So if you kind of back that out, if you are looking at a seed round and you think that you're going to need 4 investors, you need to pitch at least 100 investors. And so knowing that, you better have at least 100 leads at the beginning of your pipeline, because if you don't, if you have like 20, it's exceedingly unlikely that you are going to convert 2 out of 20 of those leads. You might, and some people do. Some people do a lot of research and a lot of pre-work and build up relationships over time, so when they do get their 20, super targeted investor leads, they close, 2 or 4 of them. It does happen, but more often than not, you are going to need a fairly robust pipeline of leads coming in that are going to result in 2 to 4 commitments. And in addition to that is, these are pitches that you have to be having, right? So if you are doing cold emails to investors and maybe your open rate or your follow-up rate is 50%, you're gonna need to send at least 200 emails. And oftentimes it's more than that. So it is a big process. Do not take it lightly. So it is a really big process. And the other thing about it is that sometimes the sales cycle, so how long it takes from that initial outreach to the time that you close, it can be really long. With some investors, it's super fast, and you will pitch them, they will get excited about what you're doing, they'll go straight into due diligence, and they'll want to close the deal. But oftentimes, it takes a long time to kind of develop that relationship with investors, because maybe they're a little bit on the fence. Maybe they're really not sure about you as a founder. You might be a first-time founder. They want to kind of get more proof that you can really pull it off, that you can be responsible, that you can be persistent, that you really know what you're doing. And sometimes that process of getting familiar with you and getting comfortable with you as a leader takes a little bit of time. I would say on average, plan at least 6 months for your seed fundraise, and even pre-seed as well. It does take time. Knowing that it takes a lot of time, one of the things that is really difficult about fundraising is that it takes a lot of time. And then the second thing that is super difficult about fundraising is that you get a ton of no's. So, going back to my example, to get 4 investors, 4 commitments, you need to get 96 no's at the very least. Maybe you're a little bit better than that, maybe you're a little bit worse, but as you can see, that's a lot of no's. And so it is super hard to kind of stay involved, committed, and excited about your company over that really long journey. And what I found really works well is simply breaking that huge journey into much smaller journeys. So having weekly milestones and goals, monthly goals, really, for example, focusing on how many conversations you're having rather than thinking about, did I get to my 2 or 4 yeses? How far along am I in my fundraise? But just seeing that you're making progress, seeing that you're having conversations, I think is going to really help you to stay motivated. It's not going to make you euphoric, but it's going to definitely make the process a lot more engaging. Those are my tips for improving your startup fundraising by treating it like sales. I'm sure, we could get really much deeper into it, but I think if you kind of adopt those basic patterns, those basic practices, you will supercharge your fundraising. And I wish you the best of luck to getting your fundraising goals. So if you enjoyed this episode of Startup Basics, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell button so you can get more episodes like this about fundraising, about finding product market fit, and building the next big startup. See you next time on Startup Basics.